Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one size fits all protocols, just real answers, deep rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Hello, Kendall. Kendall is a very special person to me and my company, and I cannot wait to have her share all of her expertise. She is an integrative health practitioner and somatic therapist who helps purpose driven women heal high functioning anxiety through resorting and rewiring their nervous system for self trust and authentic expression. She uses her diverse skill set in somatic therapy, applied neuroscience, and naturopathic nutrition to create her proven 7-step process to nervous system strength and emotional resilience. I feel like that barely even scratches all of the surface of what you are, even though it's such an incredible bio. It's just Kendall has so much to offer. So Kendall, welcome, and I would love for you to just dive in, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into this work.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again, Shannon, for inviting me on. I know we have been working together for the past few years in different capacities, but I just love coming into your community spaces that you create and interacting with the clients that you have in your world and just the people who you've drawn to your community because it's a really special group of women who really do fall into that category. I see there are a lot of high achieving, purpose driven women who are on a mission in this life to do something really special and to be this special presence that's their birthright. And sometimes we just meet them where they're kind of having some obstacles come up in the way, whether that be, physically or mentally. And yeah, for me, you did a great little bio there, and my journey has been interesting in this professional space of health and wellness. I really came into this a lot from my own journey. So, for those of you that have never really heard from me or heard about kind of my own experience here, I was diagnosed with about three autoimmune diseases, actually, depending on which doctor you ask, because you never know. Some might diagnose you with five, others will diagnose you, oh, no, you don't have any of those. You actually only have this one. But really, the kind of strongest, most life changing diagnosis for me was a diagnosis of lupus. And that was almost 9 years now, I believe, that I got that diagnosis. But as many of you know, it's not just like a single moment in time. It's an accumulation of many years of kind of physical and mental health, usually symptoms building and building on each other. And a lot of times we're searching for different practitioners, we're searching for different test modalities before we actually get any sort of diagnosis, if we even do, right? So it was a lifelong journey for me. And that diagnosis came when I was about 21. But really, since the age of about 4 or 5 is when I started to have chronic health issues. Um, and particularly in my story, in my journey, I can really say that those physical symptoms were always very, very highly correlated with me kind of being what I would consider a lot of people refer to as like highly sensitive person. So like highly emotionally aware, sensitive, going through a lot of kind of emotional difficulty later in my teenage years and adolescence, more trauma and things like this, which I had always kind of thought and were taught like, oh, that's separate, right? That's like your mental health or whatever that means. And then your physical health, that's like a different thing. And then even there, we have the GI doctor and the endocrinologist and the I don't know what, right? The rheumatologist. And really, my journey has been over the past years, like on learning all of that separation that was taught to us of, oh, you're just, you're a mind floating up here, and then you're all these different separate parts of your body. And no one ever talks about the emotions or the soul or what that even means and how that fits into this whole thing. So my journey since that diagnosis has been really more than anything, sure, a lot of learning, but also a lot of unlearning about all of that stuff that we're taught kind of directly and indirectly about physical, mental, emotional health. Um, and through my own journey, I have always had a really big calling and focus on sort of this world of what I now call the nervous system. When I first came into that, I didn't really have a name for it. I just knew I was really drawn to things like yoga and meditation and breath work and things like this. I didn't really know why. I started having that call around maybe 15 or 16 years old. And when it came to this diagnosis point in my life, I was really called back to that world. So I did um, go to a meditation retreat at the time of my diagnosis. And that's where I actually learned about the nervous system. And I started learning about kind of our biology and really the biochemistry that's related to the nervous system as well. And first, how that affects our physical health. So it got me really interested in that. But from there, I just got really interested in the body in general. So in my own journey, I started studying on my own nutrition and I started applying it to my own life. And then I went more into the functional nutrition, naturopathic world, studied a lot of more of the newest high-tech tests and modalities, but in the same way, I live in southern Mexico. I've studied with indigenous healers and traditional healers and gone kind of more of that ancient medicine, ancestral medicine route as well, in understanding like what is the intersection between all these modalities of healing. So um, I was working for the past few years, with a lot of practitioners like yourself in that capacity of kind of functional nutrition, a lot focusing on the chronic disease, chronic hormonal issues. I was working in a functional medicine practice out of New York for several years with a lot of clients in that hormonal space, hormonal based issues and autoimmune based issues. And, I just kept getting the same message over and over in a different way with almost every single client that came into my life, which was like, this person really needs to heal, restore, rewire their nervous system. Otherwise, these other pieces of the puzzle aren't going to fall into place. When it comes to their autoimmunity or their digestion or their mental health, um, which has really become a lot of my focus over the past couple years. So it's been an evolution for me, but in the same way rather, going back to the simplicity of the basics of what is that one domino that when we get that right, it's gonna help with all of the other physical, mental, emotional health issues that are happening. And for me, that domino is the nervous system. And if we get that right, everything else physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually becomes so much easier and clearer.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a little background on both Kendall and I. I mean, we met when my company was a primarily like nutrition and fitness coaching company transitioning to functional health. And Kendall was doing our lab readings. And, both you were really interested at the time in nervous system, but it wasn't quite as like prevalent. And I was still a
Right.
little like, I love labs, like, and like very logical and was like, yeah, I understand nervous system, but like it wasn't quite as much of a focus. And I remember hearing Kendall being like, these same things are coming up. It's nervous system, it's nervous system. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I was like a lot of our clients, like, let's work that in and we'll do protocols and we'll run more labs and we do all the hormone in the gut and all that stuff. And then the more and more you dive into it, the more you can't unsee, unlearn that really is the
Right.
root, which is what Kendall is kind of geared more towards her life. I went more into the bioenergetic world instead of the functional lab world because it's like when you address the body, when we talk about holistic isn't just like gut hormones, you know? It's like, no, holistic is really, what is your nervous system doing? How is it, responding? How can we chill the F out so we can heal? Because we just are not taught to do that. We are not taught how to do it or why it's important. And so I know with us working with many of our clients, it's like there's a lot of pushback a little bit. No, they can't be it. It has to be another protocol. It has to be another supplement. Well, can you just change my macros? There must be a workout program I'm missing. It's like, I guess a good question, like, why do we feel so resistant to this as well? And if somebody maybe feels like, yes, I understand this is the path, I just don't know what to do, how to go about doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, 100%. And I think even in our own situations, like we've had our own resistance to it.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what really causes us to search for solutions outside of ourselves. And that's like one of the biggest messages that I've collected as well from working with so many different clients in like these different settings is that we've been convinced, and I want to say almost brainwashed, that we cannot heal ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Our body's not capable of that. There's some magical healer if you're like more of the spiritual world, or there's some magical doctor, or this combination of 40 supplements that is going to heal me. There's no possible way that that capacity already exists within my own body.
Mhm.
And it's really sad because we as humans have so much, not only potential to heal, but potential to expand and transform and achieve so much in so many different aspects of our lives. But if we kind of constantly fall victim to, I'm not powerful, I'm going to give my power away to the next practitioner that wants me to do the new protocol of 40 different supplements or the next medication, or surely this next doctor who costs $2,000 for each 10-minute visit is going to have the answer. Right. And it's like, this seems like I'm joking, but it's 100% real. Like, I've met clients who've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
on their health journey, and they'll take pictures of their cabinets, and they're not making this up. I mean, there's
Supplement graveyard. Oh, yeah.
hundreds of supplements. They'll send me Excel spreadsheets
Yep.
of their supplement schedules.
Mm.
Um, and it's just sad to me that this type of, what we call functional medicine has gotten to this point. And of course, not all practitioners are like that, but
Yeah.
it is sad. So it's like going back to that original question, we're just so programmed to seek answers with outside of ourselves instead of within. And the second answer I'll give you to that question is doing the inner work of working with your nervous system, whether it's on a body-based level, somatically or energetically, or a combination of both, is not necessarily easy, right? Because it requires us to kind of see things and
Mhm.
feel things that we've been avoiding our whole lives.
Mhm.
Um, so it's probably the most rewarding and powerful work that you can do, but it's difficult in the sense that it requires you to dramatically change the way you connect to your body, you connect to life in general, and you see things.
Mhm. Oh.
And that's not easy, right? For us to just say, okay, I'm gonna basically let go of everything that I've been taught and programmed to believe and just jump into this, new kind of paradigm, which I love the word paradigm that you're kind of inviting me into.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the beauty of working with someone like you or working with someone like me is that you don't have to jump into this dark lagoon on your own. You
Mm-mm.
know, we understand that that's not an easy leap to make. And
Mm-mm.
we're here to be like, look, I'm here too. I'm going to hold your hand. I've been here. I've taken several women just like you through the same process.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm going to be swimming right next to you, holding your hand, and you're not going to drown here.
Mm.
And that's to me really what this type of coaching or practitioner work is.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I think one, I think people think nervous system work is gonna be easy. It's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna meditate for 5 minutes and all my problems will be fine."
All of the day.
You know? And it's like, it is the most important thing you can do, and it's not easy, and I remember when Kendall and I worked on we actually put together a nervous system course for our clients, which is incredible, and I was so happy, and I will tell you, it is like pulling teeth trying to get people to do that versus watch all of the, I have a whole other portal with the nutrition and the detox and people have no problems watching that stuff, but I don't they don't have time when it comes to nervous system course,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's like we think I think as very high performing women too, it's not productive, or like
Exactly.
we're not getting ahead when it really is the opposite. And I think it takes a lot of I don't want to say struggle, but somebody to like a struggle for you to really realize I can't keep doing what I've been doing. I have to do things
Mm.
different. And this is the way. This is our innate nature is to tap into, our nervous system and understand how we can control it. I don't want to say control because many of our clients are very they have control of everything, and it's like we have to, like,
Yeah.
help them, like, release some of that control, but, like, tap more into that innate intelligence again, of our bodies, and I know Kendall works with not only, clients who are going through this journey, but practitioners as well, understanding,
Yeah.
why so many practitioners I mean, we've been in this industry for a long time, that's something that's a huge gap. These practitioners are just over protocols, over dieting, over supplementing, over exercise, all the things we know how to do. And it's like when you strip it down to like, more nervous system work, you see better results and you see results quicker, but it's hard because we're just not taught that's the way. And a client almost like pressures you into like, well, you need to be doing more. I'm paying you
Mhm.
more for it. It's like this is what you need to be doing, you
Yeah.
know? But it's hard.
Yeah, letting it be easy is really hard for a lot of times this category of what we could call high functioning, like female entrepreneurs or who are very, maybe they're not an entrepreneur, but they're really determined in their career or whatever it is, whatever aspect of life they're in. They have this kind of driven quality about them. And the message with that has always been like, oh, well, you need to do more to kind of perform and be this perfectionist
Mhm.
and falling into like letting something feel actually like more simple
Mhm.
and following the checklist of like all the things I have to do, like letting that kind of fall away is also a little bit scary for our nervous system, which actually goes back to to rewiring the nervous system, right? Because if that's been drilled into you from such a young age that safety comes from me being this perfect girl who gets all the A's, who plays all the sports, who looks pretty with her nice little braids and her nice little dresses. Um, that's a lot of stuff. And we were never necessarily validated for, like, oh, wow, you're so good at feeling your emotions. Actually, quite the contrary. We were like, please don't do that.
Yep,
You're just an annoying little girl screaming. You
yep,
can't be angry. You can't be sad. Where's the A plus? You
yep,
know? So a lot of times we're actually sent to our rooms when we are engaging with that other side of our nature, which
mhm,
is the emotional aspect, sometimes that intuitive aspect. Sometimes when we go back to the kind of neuroscience layer of this, I like to almost say like the left brain and the right brain
mm,
because and that's really simplifying neuroscience, but it just helps us understand it. Like that left brain mentality, which is drilled into us in society today, is like, okay, logic, planning. Am I checking off all my boxes? Am I exactly on time? And I'm meeting all of my goals, which it's not that we don't need that. We do need to be, on time and be able to plan, but we're really discouraged from going deep into that kind of right brain mentality, which is where creativity lives, which is where thinking outside of the box, innovation, deep presence,
mhm,
deep emotional feeling in the body lives.
mhm.
And we've never really been, for most of us, rewarded for going into that. So it's like really changing the hardware there and rewiring is part of the process. But it's so rewarding when you can start, allowing yourself to be wholly you, like not just cutting off parts of yourself.
Yeah. I think people don't know what that means. Like, well, this is who I am, and it's
Mhm.
like, is it or is it how you've been taught and you kind of formed, your beliefs, your systems, how you act, how you feel around that, and I know that's certainly something I think both of us have gone through, is that
Yeah.
unlearning. It's very difficult when you're high achieving, you're taught, what you do, how if you work hard, screw burnout, like just work hard and achieve things, you'll be loved, you'll be revered, you'll have what you want.
Mm.
And it's like, but we have missed the mark with actually loving ourselves first in that process in an effort to just like drive further and, just achieve, right? Until we burn out. you know?
Right. There's some sort of crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be the physical burnout, it could be the mental health kind of alarms going off of, oh, now I'm suddenly like so anxious I can't even, go out of the house. Or like
Yep.
I'm having panic attacks when I need to like drive my kids to school.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it often gets to that level, or sometimes it's the physical, the nervous system flares up, and now I have my autoimmune diagnosis.
Yep.
Now I have my terrible IBS that I have to like not go to events with my friends and family. Oh, okay, now I'm gonna seek help, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like we've all been there, we've all gone, like me and you, we've gone through that. A lot of our clients have.
Mhm.
But now you are being called to take a pause and say, am I going to go back into that same belief system and that same nervous system state that brought me there? So
Mhm.
that now I can just go through that same breakdown 5, 10 years down the line again?
Mhm.
Or am I going to make a radical shift in my belief system, in my nervous system, so that I can actually create a different reality and life for myself? Physically, relationship wise, career wise, all of that.
Mhm. Yeah. I think what would be helpful is to talk a little bit about, maybe somebody's in this position. They're like, you know what? I have done all the things, right? Most of the clients that come into us we're not their first attack, right? It's they have
Right.
tried multiple different things and we're the only ones that truly feel like we help them, because we do take this
Mm.
holistic approach, right? But,
Yeah.
if somebody was knowing I'm not feeling good. I can't keep doing what I'm doing, but nervous system's scary, weird, overwhelmed. So many of our
Yeah.
clients are overwhelmed by everything. We're in fight, or really freeze. Many of our clients are on functional freeze.
Freeze. Yeah.
So how would you gently guide them into, maybe bringing awareness that nervous system really is maybe at the root of their issues, and how can we kind of move through it?
Yeah. Well, first, let's talk about awareness, right? Because awareness is the key to really starting any sort of process of change. Obviously, if we don't know where we're starting from and we're not being honest with ourselves about that, the process isn't going to work. Right. So I really want to call people's attention to this point of awareness and invite them to take their time with that, of really answering this question: where am I at now? You know, on a mental health level, on an emotional health level, on a physical health level. I might even look at things like my relationships and my career, and give yourself the time, whatever that looks like for you, really understand where am I in space, in time? What am I actually feeling? Am I actually satisfied and happy with where I am in these areas of my life? Okay. Get radically honest with yourself. First step for anything.
Hmm.
Okay. And this step in and of itself can prevent what we see with a lot of our clients, which is, I'm just going to keep running to the next practitioner who hands me a bucket of supplements and a new nutrition protocol. That's not probably your issue, right?
Mm-mm.
If your issue is that you have 16 supplements for your hormones, 20 supplements for your digestion, and every lab you do, the practitioner is telling you, oh, you know what's really out of range here? Your stress hormones, your cortisol, whatever. There's different ways to represent that depending on what lab we're talking about, right? Or physical symptoms.
Mhm.
Okay. For example, oh gosh, every time I get stressed, I have a flare of my IBS. I have a flare of my autoimmune disease. Oh my gosh, you know what? I've had all these crazy changes in my life and now I'm not getting my period anymore. Okay. Those are very physical wake-up calls of, "Look, your nervous system is the one who's trying to send you a message." Thyroid issues are extremely heavily tied to the dysregulation in your stress hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, right? So, right now, instead of using the word nervous system, I'm just using different language to talk to you about what that means. But we're all talking about the same sort of thing. Okay. So, really stopping to see, so is the issue that I'm deficient in supplements? Or is it that maybe something in how I'm operating and moving through my life needs to kind of change? Okay. So that's the first thing I would give yourself, allow yourself time in a gentle way to really evaluate that. And if you have the financial or time possibility to work with a coach or therapist, whatever feels good to you, um, I would do that, because it's much easier for someone else to see the whole picture with you and kind of hold your hand through that than for you to do that auto reflection. Not that you can't, it's just an invitation, you know? So I would really start by looking to be honest with yourself. Do I have an ability to maybe bring someone else into this picture with me who can help me with this kind of like nervous system life evaluation? Um, and then from there, we would just probably go deeper into understanding what part of the nervous system we're kind of living in, if that makes sense, most of the time.
Mhm.
And we can kind of get deeper into like how you could kind of get some clues to that if you want, in this next part of the podcast as well.
Oh, yeah. I feel like you and I could chat for, like, hours and, like, dive so into this, but I love what you just said. Um, because that is true, you don't have a supplement deficiency, you've gotta face and this is what everybody really misses. If you have all these things flaring up, what's the missing link here, you know? I mean, yes, don't get me wrong, supplements can help if you've got a gut infection, and maybe to help balance your hormones in the meantime, but you will not fully heal. That was a big thing for me. I'm sure you felt this too. Like I felt good when I healed my autoimmune issue, got off my medications, but there was always a missing puzzle piece that I couldn't figure out on why I really couldn't fully heal. And I know for me, probably like many of the people listening, like I needed the help. Like I hired people to help and
Yeah.
talk to me because I would brush it off. I would absolutely do the nutrition, the fitness, way before I would do the nervous system stuff. So I like
Yeah.
need somebody to point that out to me and just to understand that like if you are so dysregulated, sometimes it's very hard to pull yourself back into what actually we should be feeling. Like we don't know what that feels like anymore. You know what I mean? It's just become so normal to live in a constant state of adrenaline and, you know,
Yeah.
fight or flight. And I honestly, I thought that was normal. I thought it was fine to be,
Yeah.
I think everybody that comes into our worlds, I don't feel stressed. you
Mm-mm.
know, it's like, well, your labs are really showing me otherwise, and it's like, I love labs. I know you to an extent too, but sometimes it's like we already know that, but it's very validating to the client to be like,
Mhm.
here really is what it's showing in the 3D for you, that like everything's
Yeah.
so tanked, but it still goes back to what we were talking about. So
Yeah, and whatever you need. Some people they need the labs to bring that level of deeper awareness in. That's okay,
yeah.
right? I can understand sometimes why that feels, really impactful for people.
Mhm.
And maybe some others don't. And they're listening and they're just like, you know what? I really feel called to go into this just based on what you're saying. Like that really feels in line with what my experience is. And I don't necessarily need, a 400 or $500 lab to tell me that. Right?
Mhm.
And that's okay too. Mhm.
So true. Sometimes I'm like, "Listen, we can run this lab. It's gonna cost $500, but
Right.
rather not do that because I already pretty much know what's gonna come back, and if we don't fix these foundations if we fix the foundations and you're still having problems, let's do it, right?" But
Yeah.
so much comes back to that, with bioresonance work, it's so different, it's just understanding the body in a truly whole way and realizing, like, oh, we can actually see emotions on this, which is very cool, trapped emotions. And it's very
Yeah.
interesting when you bring them up. I mean, you and I chatted about this. It's like people are like, oh, that's not a problem. Oh, I've never experienced that. It's like, well, your body
Mm.
is literally telling me something different. So trying
Mhm.
to hide from yourself or not be able to express or emote, it's because our body knows it keeps the score, even if our conscious mind is like, I don't understand, you know?
Mhm. Mhm, and that's part of the work too is, like, just learning how to speak that language of I call it the language of the nervous system again, and some people call it somatics or, like, the language of the body. I think we've been kind of so desensitized to that. We're so used to using that kind of prefrontal cortex, which is, like, our cognitive part of our brain to kind of explain and rationalize things, that we've really lost a lot of that ability, um, to actually even really understand what's going on in our bodies in the most basic way in the nervous system, which is really our first language, if you think about it. Like when we're born into this world as babies, we don't speak English, we don't speak Russian, we don't speak Spanish. We speak with our bodies and we feel a sensation and we cry when we want something or we show our caregivers what we need or we reach for the food or we go away when we're scared. And that is our initial natural language of how humans were designed to kind of understand ourselves and the world around us. And our prefrontal cortex is super cool because now we can like talk and we can have really in-depth intellectual conversations. But if we forget about how we were designed, um, we're forgetting about kind of what it means to be human, basically, and losing connection with that aspect of ourselves that which is why I think we have such an uptick in like the anxiety and the chronic stress and the physical, the autoimmune, all of that.
Yeah. I think there's also, I don't remember the exact statistic, but, I want to say like 70% of autoimmune issues are also female, women.
I think it's more. Yeah, I
I
think
think
it's
like
actually
80.
even 80. Yeah, yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
more. Which even going into that, like females, there's so many kind of aspects of how we could understand that. But one, the female nervous system is very connected to like our hormonal system, which makes a lot of sense. And our hormones being like way more complex than kind of the male hormone system and more sensitive to kind of those emotional and also just stress hormones, like way more sensitive to stress hormones and way quicker to go into dysregulation.
Mhm.
Um, so we won't go too far into the biochemistry today, right? But that is just important to acknowledge that like female physiology is really, really closely tied to that nervous system and the stress hormones because of like evolutionarily, that was what made sense to kind of modulate if a female, was going to reproduce or not. Was she too stressed from her environment?
Oh man, that's another topic we'll have to talk about is fertility and stress. Because
100%. Yeah.
it's true, but it's absolutely true. And I think as women, we take on a big emotional load, right? We also suppress emotions more than, m- you know, we're taught to kind of suppress our innate, men are not meant to be quite as expressive and emotional as women. And it's not a bad or good thing. It's just that's their body versus women. I feel like we just shut it down, and that gets trapped in our body too, right? That manifests as different diseases and different, autoimmune issues. And not to mention, we go into fertility, we go into having a baby, if that's, you know, what you end up doing. And then we're so depleted. And then we're taught, postpartum, we're just depleted even more. And so it just makes sense that we're not supported on so many levels, not just physically, but emotionally. And I feel like when you support yourself from a nervous system standpoint too, you heal quicker, you feel more supported internally, it's just it's so important.
Yeah, I think it just accelerates all of those types of healing processes that you're talking about it, and it just makes it so much clearer and easier, and sometimes it's actually all you need, and then
Mhm.
you don't actually really need much more, um, of all that extra kind of stuff. When you give your body the basic kind of level of safety of the nervous system, it knows how to heal. It knows how to do that. Yeah, and sorry, I'm just looking around because I'm realizing my computer is giving me a power alert suddenly, which I don't know
Oh,
why. So I don't want it to black out on you.
it's okay.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
You're good for me for right now, but
Okay. Yeah, let me see if I can just plug in here.
all good.
Do a little cut there.
No, it's all good. It's authentic. We don't perfect. Um, from a recovering perfectionist. There you go.
Right, there you go. You gotta let it slide, and that's one of the things is just yeah, also learning about how to deal with even little things like that come up when it's like, okay, I had a plan of how I want something to go,
Mm,
and, when something doesn't go as planned, how is my kind of biochemical physical response happening in my nervous system. So
mm,
part of the when we talk about doing nervous system work, part of the work is kind of rewiring that so that we don't get necessarily this huge spike of the adrenaline and cortisol because of like a small non-life threatening incident.
yes.
Um, we are able to, maintain that response for maybe 3, 5 minutes instead of, oh, now this dysregulation and this excretion of adrenaline and cortisol is now like that for a whole day or maybe a whole week. Or for some people, it becomes a chronic daily thing. So that's even like a good micro example of how I respond to the stress.
I'm glad you said that because I feel like, you being so sappy and, a cup tipping over and suddenly your whole day is ruined and everything, just starts becoming blah, it's like that's not a normal response, I remember, I somebody had bought me a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff when I was in high school. And I like got really annoyed that somebody, it was a teacher, actually it was my tap teacher, or no, my jazz. Yeah, I was a professional
Oh,
dancer, so it was like my teacher because I was such a perfectionist and I was not I mean, as a professional dancer, I was
yeah.
whatever, but it was true, I didn't realize how reactive I was when some little thing went
Mm.
right, and that was just the way I'd always been, so I didn't think that that was weird. Now, like, so much crap can happen, and it's like, okay, it's not, I just just roll with it, and it doesn't affect me as much, and not only on a mental level, but on a physical level, right? Before it would be like I couldn't walk, right? Like I had to walk with a cane or my stomach, I couldn't eat, or my period would just go missing. So it was like, yeah, I'm glad we talked about the physical manifestations too, because it wasn't just like, oh, I feel really chill right now. It's
Mm.
my body, because every time people are like, "Shannon, I can't not be stressed." It's like, it's not about removing stress in your life, it's how your
Um,
body responds to it. And when you have a more resilient nervous system, right, it can handle stressors much better. So even if you do go back and you have something dramatic go on in your life, it's not that your body is like you're able to handle it better. It doesn't take you back years of healing, you know what I mean? It's just it's a small setback and then we catapult forward again, and it feels much better to live that way.
it does, and that, it speaks to kind of like all of the different reasons as to, why someone would kind of like come to see one of us in the first place is essentially that like bucket of what your body can kind of hold in terms of like let's call it like a stress bucket.
Yep.
And by stress, I don't mean just like emotional stress. It can also be physical stress, like, oh, I got a virus, I had an
Yep.
injury, I didn't sleep as much, right? I didn't eat as many nutritious foods. Like those are all levels of physical stress. I
Mhm.
just had a baby, right? Um, and then there's like the emotional stress. So that could be whatever emotions are kind of present in life and relationship dynamics, all of that. There's just mental stress, which is literally just I have a bunch of stuff to do. There's not enough time. I have all these demands on me. So there's all of these levels, and they're all coming into the stress bucket. So it's like when that bucket overflows, that's going to be when I get now the PCOS diagnosis, the autoimmune disease, the terrible digestive. Oh, now I have to go on and I'm not criticizing any medications, but now I have to maybe go on the anxiety med
Yep.
before I could kind of, live without it, for example,
Yep.
right? So with us, we're not telling you, oh, you can't put anything in your stress bucket. You can't have stress, right? The whole point is we're working with these purpose driven, high achieving women that are like, no, I actually want to do more in my life. I
Yep.
want to have kids. I want to travel. I want to like have my own business, but I need my bucket to be a little bit bigger.
Mhm.
So how do I grow that bucket? And then also, how do I learn my toolkit to take water out of the bucket before it overflows?
Mhm.
It's really that simple. That's all you need. And you can have the biggest, most expansive life you want,
Mhm.
right? But if you don't have those tools in place and your bucket's teeny tiny and you're super reactive and you're causing this cascade of stress hormones every time your computer loses charge and you're recording a podcast, for example, it's not going to be good for your physical or mental health.
Or those around you, because your emotions, your kids see it, your family see your work sees it, it's like everybody, we can feel this, so it affects people so much bigger too, that's one thing I think people also tend to
Mm,
forget about too,
that's a whole, and we could probably do a whole other podcast on that. But I will say a small thing, which is that we have something called mirror neurons in our body. So especially if you're a parent or if you're a business owner or teacher or something like that, I really want you to think about this. So we as humans were designed to attune, kind of respond to what's going on in the nervous system of people around us. And if you think of that like evolutionarily, it was because, okay, well, maybe like these people understood there was a threat. There was like a tiger coming to attack the tribe. So I want to very quickly respond to like their nonverbal cues and start running or whatever it is I needed to do. That's just kind of like a basic example. So we still have these mirror neurons, and unconsciously, your nervous system is always evaluating the people around you by looking at their eyes, by hearing their tone of voice, by looking at their muscle tone, if it's tense, if it's guarded, to evaluate the state of their nervous system and essentially decide, is it safe here? And is this person I'm talking to like a welcoming, safe person?
Hmm.
So this is so important if you're a parent, because not only are the child picking up on your mirror neurons and all this, they have the mirror neurons that are picking up on your nervous system, but they're also learning about the world. Is the world a safe place, or do I always have to be on guard? Do I always have to live in anxiety to feel safe?
Mm.
Right? So, this is really powerful for our kids. And if we're a coach, if we're a health practitioner, what message am I sending to my clients? Am I telling them that they're safe with me, that I have a regulated nervous system so that I can hold space for them and I can guide them safely? Or am I tensing up and I'm showing them that they make me feel uncomfortable and I'm unconsciously telling them that I'm not welcoming them here? I'm not welcoming them to this space with me, and that I myself feel a little bit, kind of nervous and off guard. And that sounds really simple, but this is kind of the basis of all human relationships as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you tapped on that. And I feel like we could talk for hours on how in depth but yet simple, it all is. I think if you could give 1, 2, 3 words of advice, if somebody's kind of newer to this journey, wanting to understand the nervous system a little bit more, wants to help heal themselves, maybe doesn't know where, like what would you one give them as like maybe some advice or point them kind of in the right direction?
Yeah. Well, I would say, just as a simple, really, really simple basic practice to get started, start tuning in to your body on four main levels. I usually guide people to look at it at four main levels. Um, Even in this moment, you're listening to this podcast right now. Tune into the position of your body, your posture. If you're tensing, if you're relaxed, check areas like your jaw, your shoulders, your hips. Um, Tune in. So that's the first area, your body. The second is your breath. Tune into your breath. Is it going down into the diaphragm, into the belly area? Does it feel shallow up in the chest? Are you holding your breath? Are you restricting it? How does your breath feel? And make that evaluation. Okay. So we have body, breath. The next is emotion. You know, what emotion, if any, you don't have to make it up if nothing's really there. Is there an emotion present that corresponds to these other symptoms, right? Or other conditions? Um, and then the fourth is thoughts. And it's not about what are my thoughts, it's more about what kind of thoughts am I having? Are they very racy? I can't keep up with them. Are they negative? Are they going more into a hopeless state? Or are they rather calm and positive and kind of seeing the whole perspective in a very calm way? Make an evaluation of your thoughts overall in the moment. So look at those four areas: thoughts, emotions, body, breath. Start doing this 3, 5 times a day. It should take you 1 minute each time you do it.
Mm.
And just start seeing, by changing your posture, by changing your breath a little bit, are you able to start shifting? If you're finding you're getting into the racy category, the negative category, the helpless category, the restricted, the tension, is there a small micro shift that I can start to do? And this is the very first step in understanding how to learn and speak the language of the nervous system, this kind of unspoken language of the body. Um, so I would encourage you just to do that for a few days and see what you notice. And if you feel like this is really important for you, like I really need to invest in my nervous system and getting this part of my journey kind of right, you can definitely check out my resources. I work with one-on-one clients. I work with practitioners in a group format. I'm just doing that 2 times a year right now. And I offer free consultations, right? I offer 20-minute free consultations. So if you're like, I don't know where to start, I don't even know where my nervous system is, but I know I need to do this, and I know that I feel like you can help me. You can grab one of those spots, and we can also talk about, what might be the right next step for you. Um, but start with that just minimal little awareness practice and see what you start discovering about your own body and your own nervous system.
I love that. So powerful and small. I do that all the time while I'm driving. I'm like, ooh, my jaw, my shoulders. Oh, I'm holding my breath. It's like you don't realize how much stress your body holds, on a day-to-day basis. So I guarantee somebody is listening to this is gonna be like, oh, I just got called out.
100%. 100%. Starting with awareness, starting with the micro shifts, being consistent with the micro shifts.
Oh, yeah, that whole consistency thing too. Yeah. It's like, well, I did my breath work and my awareness. I'm healed. Ooh,
Mhm.
I wish it was that simple. But thank you, Kendall. You are a light, so much knowledge. I'm sure she will be back again. I will put the link to her website and that discovery call link as well down in the
Yeah.
notes. So if you want to go check her out, awesome. If you guys found this helpful, if you found just a little nugget of inspiration, I would love to hear about it. If you want to write a review, that is incredibly helpful. It helps us reach a lot more people. If not, just sending us a DM as well. We love to hear all positive feedback. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next show.
Bye bye.